we'll let folks catch up as they come in. I'm Angela Brown in the Division of Cardiology, and I'm right now the Director of the Office of Faculty Development. So thank you all for coming for this CEP workshop. There's an agenda in your packet, so we'll basically talk about the WashU CV and the CEP, the different components of the CEP, because that's probably the one thing that's new for some of you, is actually creating your CEP in addition to your CV. And then hopefully you brought your CEP with you, even if it's in draft format, and we have faculty members here, senior faculty members, who will give you some one-on-one feedback about your CEP to get you moving along on the road to promotion. So you've all met Jen Mosier, who just stepped out. But if you have any questions moving forward, just reach out to Jen. All of our materials are on the Office of Faculty Development website, Internal Medicine Faculty at internalmedicinefaculty.worcester.edu. And there's a tab there that says Appointments and Promotions. So you'll find what's in your packet. You have a copy of the APGAR document, which outlines the promotion process. There's the template for the CV, the template for the CEP, some general tips for putting those documents together. And then on the website, we have examples of both as well that you can go to and look. So any questions that you have during this brief presentation before we break into small groups, just raise your hand and let me know. And then afterwards, Jen will give more instructions about the small groups and how that'll work. A couple of other things in your packet is also an evaluation form. So we really value your feedback, so make sure you fill that out. If at any time you want more snacks, as you can tell, it's a baseball-themed snack table with Cracker Jacks and popcorn. So just feel free to get up and get snacks. So this is very informal. So thank you for coming. Yes, internalmedicinefaculty.worcester.edu. So all of this information is on the website under the Promotions and Appointments tab. Okay, so just briefly, the Office of Faculty Development. We're here as a resource for you, guidance for your professional and personal development, so that you can achieve academic success and hopefully a supportive environment in the Department of Medicine. And we've been doing this since 2013, so right at 7 years. So hopefully we are making an impact and everyone is finding out things that they need to find out. Is anyone here not in the Department of Medicine? Okay, so we put this disclaimer here that what we're going to talk about today about the CVs and the CEP is specific to the Department of Medicine. Until last year, about a year ago, all of the departments required, well, the school required a CV, but at that point, the Department of Medicine and the Department of Pediatrics were the only departments that required a CEP. And the CEP, for those on the clinician track, is required for promotion in addition to the CV. And about a year ago, the School of Medicine adopted a new format for the CV that actually includes a couple of components of the CEP in it. Particularly if you look at this document that's kind of marked up here. On the back, there's a section that says Community Service Contributions. That section was actually pulled out of the CEP and put in the CV for everyone, okay? So what that created for us was we had the majority of our faculty already with two separate documents, a CV and a CEP, and we didn't want everyone to have to go back and try to recreate what they had already done. So what that means is, if you already have a CEP that you started before a year ago, continue what you're doing. There's no need to go back and reformat. But if you're just starting your CEP, if this is the beginning for you, then use the CV format and the CEP CEP format that's on the website. So your CV and CEP may look just a little bit different than what's on the School of Medicine website. We want you to use the one that's on the Department of Medicine website. Because Dr. Frazier likes to go rogue. You'll also see on the format, when we talk about the CV, that there's a photo in the upper upper right-hand corner. And we're the only department that wants a photo on the CV. So anyway, we put this disclaimer in here that what we're talking about is Department of Medicine specific and not the other department. So talk to your department chair about what he or she wants. Okay, so this is a little joke, the academic career pace. You know, when you're here, you feel like you're on the hamster wheel, that they want more and more and more and more and more out of you, and until you just run yourselves ragged. That's really not the case. We're all doing a lot of things, and the goal is to keep track of your activities, because it's your activities that show what you're doing to leadership, and to those, your department chair, your division chiefs, and that's what gets you promoted, being able to keep track of those activities. And these are just examples of a number of things that may make up your portfolio, the items that tell the story of who you are as an academician in the Department of Medicine. So for most people, it will include their CV, and if you're on the clinician track, definitely your clinician educator portfolio. But if you're involved in research, if you're on the investigator track, by chance, you may have some of these other documents as well, you know, trainee tables, your NIH bio sketch, and so forth. But the key is make sure you keep track of everything that you're doing and try to keep it up to date, because if you don't, and then someone asks for it, then you're scrambling, trying to remember what did I do when. And that's where a lot of us found ourselves when we had to create these CEPs, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, you got to have a CEP, and it's like, okay, I've been here forever and a day, and you're trying to remember. So, you know, think of these as real-time documents that when you do something, update it, you know, or set, you know, every 2 months or every quarter, I'm just going to update my document so you have everything in track. Again, this is another joke. It says, I don't have time to write performance reviews, so I'll just criticize you in public from time to time. That's not what we want to happen, and hopefully that's not the environment that you're finding yourself in. Definitely not at the department level, and for sure hopefully not at your division level. But the important thing is that you interact with your mentors and bosses. All of you should have regular meetings with your division chiefs so that you can go over you know, what you're doing, to make sure that they're updated, so that you can show them your progress, your goals, your objectives, your productivity, because again, these are all things that are going to contribute to your timeline of when you will get promoted. Ask for feedback to make sure that you're on track. Is this an area that's a goal, and maybe I need a little bit of assistance? And the other thing is make sure your goals and that of your division align, because you don't want to spend all this time doing one thing and then you sit down and meet with your division chief and they, number one, think you're doing something else, or they say, you know what, that's not the direction we really want this division to go in. That's not a good situation to be in. But I think the key is regular meetings, you know, with your division chiefs to make sure that everybody is on the same page. The promotion process for the department is outlined here. You know, everyone should have an annual review, or every 2 years if you're more senior, with your division chief, and then the division chiefs and the department chair sit down to review all of the faculty on an annual basis. The portfolio, when it comes to promotion, consists of your CV, your CEP, your letters of support, and then they will also request copies of select manuscripts as well. The 3 pillars that they look at: research excellence, clinical excellence, and then education. Again, I mentioned that the APGAR document is in your package, which just kind of outlines all of this. There's first an internal medicine department review committee. Once you get past that committee, then Dr. Frazier actually will present your portfolio to the ad hoc committee. And the key about the ad hoc committee is that there are no Department of Medicine members on that committee. So that's why it's very important that your CV, and particularly your CEP, really outlines who you are. Because once she presents you and then leaves the room, they discuss you, but none of them are in the Department of Medicine. So you want to be clear about what you're doing, what your activities are. That committee usually consists of 4 to 6 department chairs and 2 to 3 other senior faculty representatives. And I will point out from the department chair standpoint, some of those department chairs are basic scientists. So they really don't know what you're doing from a clinical standpoint. So it's very important to be clear on your CEP what those activities are. After it passes the ad hoc committee, then it goes on to the executive faculty for review. And the executive faculty, as you know, is made up of all of the department chairs. And for those in the clinician track, it stops there. Once the executive faculty approves, then you're promoted. If you're on the tenure track, then it has to get WashU trustee and board approval as well. But that's the promotion process. I'm not going to go through this. Is everyone here on the clinician track, or is there anyone on the investigator track? Okay, so this is more specific for if you're on the tenure track. It just goes through the tenure clock, which is a tenure process. So we'll get,
Angela, just
yeah.
a quick question. That process is the same regardless of the level of promotion. This is clinical instructor to assistant, assistant associate.
Exactly.
Associate.
Exactly. And the only thing that's different is this WashU board review. If you're on the tenure or the investigator track, it stops there. But whether you're going from instructor to whatever level, that same process goes through. And that's why it's important to look at the APGAR document, because the requirements at each level are a little bit different. The higher up you go, you need more letters of support and also more external letters of support as well. Again, this shows the timeline. Nothing happens overnight. So if you have a meeting with your division chair, say in April, and your division chief says, yes, I think it's, let's put you up for promotion, it will not be effective July of that year. It's really a process, and as you can see here, I'll use oh good, I think the mouse shows up on the sides. But if you can see here, that once the division begins the packet processing, there's a question mark, because it just depends on how long it takes for them to get your letters. Then it goes to the chairman's office, and it may sit there for a little bit, or in the case of our department, it may get sent back to you. If your documents are not in order, they will be sent back. And if they're still not in order, they will be sent back again until they are in order. So that's a question mark as well. But as you can see, things take a couple of weeks, months, so forth. So it's really almost a year process to go through this. So it definitely takes time. And I would say from your perspective is that right here, the more you do back at the beginning to make sure your documents are in order, the faster you get through this process. Because if everything's not in order, you basically go back to the beginning and start over again getting those documents together. Chairman's approval, documents should be in presentation ready form. Proper spelling, grammar, punctuation, and formatting should be used. I mean, it sounds like it should be pretty common sense, but believe it or not, it often is not. And it will be reviewed prior to being sent to the committee. I'm not joking when I said sometimes it's sent back and sent back again and sent back again if it's not in the proper format or if there are a lot of grammatical areas. The CV, here's the link, again, in the appointments and promotions tab. Everyone should have a CV, whether you're on the investigator or the tenure track. And we have examples on the website for that. At the top of the example, these are the formatting rules that come from the department. Again, if you're not in the Department of Medicine, check with your department chair on formatting. But these are just some basic formatting tools, from the type of font you use to the size. Only a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch margin, nothing else. Don't number the different segments, just have them right justified. Use either a header or a footer. The other thing is that on that template, if there's a section that does not apply to you, for example, military service is on there. If you're not in the military, then just delete that heading. So anything that does not apply, delete that out. And the same thing for the CEP. There are a number of headings on the CEP. If they don't apply to you, then just delete those headings out and only put what's relevant to you. Don't forget to put the data beginning at the left margin. wrapping text, just some general things. Do not use manual page breaks. And then this thing here, include a professional shot photo in the upper right-hand corner of your CV. It should be a professional photo and not a glamour shots photo. I'm just quoting what Dr. Frazier said at the last new faculty orientation, that some of the photos are very pretty, but they're not professional photos and probably should not be on your CV. But that's, that may feel a little awkward putting your photo up there, because like I said, I don't think any of the other departments require a photo, but it is what it is, and so forth. The other tool you can use is that this is a new tool that the med school started using about a year ago, and this is an online tool to build your CV, and you can go in there, you put the data in, and once you fill in the segments, and at the end, when you hit format or whatever, it'll actually format your CV for you. But then again, just make sure it kind of fits those other requirements for us. And I'm not sure if this will allow you to upload a photo to it or not. We'll have to.
I think once you download it in your Word,
then you can
make the adjustments.
But it's a good way to keep the data up to date and so forth with that. All right. So any questions about the CV? Okay, so let's talk about the CEP. So it is required for all faculty members on the Clinician Educator track, and when appropriate if you're on the Investigator track. It's a supplement to the CV. And as we go through, I'll show some examples of what you'll find on the CV in comparison to the CEP. Because there's a lot of things that you do that really the CV doesn't capture. The CV is more of a kind of a headline kind of document that you're an attending physician at Barnes Jewish Hospital on the infectious disease service, but that's it. It doesn't really say what that means. And on the CEP is where you really get to say, well, as an attending physician, I round how many months out of the year, supervise how many residents and fellows. If you have nursing interaction, if you're involved with clinical protocols, none of that is really captured on the CV, but it is captured on the CEP. And I think that's really important because as clinicians, we do a lot of work. But if you just say, I'm an attending at Barnes Jewish Hospital and ID, it really doesn't tell the breadth or the scope of work that you do. So that's what the CEP does. It's a supplement to your CV that gives a very detailed compilation of your clinical, educational, and community service activities. And for those who are involved in education, it definitely gives an opportunity to really expand that. It's not a duplication of your CV. So some things that are on your CV, again, will just be kind of like the header, but no detail. If you have all of your CME courses that you have been like the chairperson of on your CV, then you don't want to duplicate that on your CEP. So they're not duplicate documents, but they're meant to complement each other. Again, as I mentioned, it's a real-time document, so you want to make sure that you keep this up to date. It's also a tool that can be used for career development and career planning. So if you have this when you meet with your division chiefs, you may notice that there are certain themes of areas where you have a strong focus, and that may be something that you want to develop further. There are some people who at the top of their CEP actually have a personal statement about their theory of teaching or learning or some long-term strategic goal. That's not required, it's not part of our template, but if you go online, just kind of Google CEP, some other institutions do have on theirs a personal statement at the very beginning. Let's see. Oh, this is actually the formatting for the CEP. Very similar to the CV when it comes to the left justification, half-inch, three-quarter-inch margins, the type of font, and so forth. The other thing is you want to be concise, but give as much detail as necessary. So, try to avoid very long, drawn-out sentences, but get the point across in either a bulleted format or just very brief sentences. Be complete, but be concise. Okay. So there are three major components to the CEP: clinical contributions, educational contributions, and community service contributions. And the reason there's an asterisk by the community service contributions is because that's the section that was pulled out of the CEP and placed in the WashU CV format. So now everybody has that community service in their CV format. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you started your CEP before a year ago, don't go back and redo it and delete all of this out. Keep what you have moving forward. But if you're just now starting, then that community service format, you can actually put in your CV and keep the clinical and the educational in your CEP. All right. So if we look at just some examples of some of the headings on the under clinical contributions on the CEP, you'll notice on the sheet that we have, we drew a line through some of the activities. Some of the categories on the new format for the CEP were actually deleted. Again, if you already have this in yours because you started before, don't take them out. But if you're just now starting, some of these categories are no longer necessary per se. So, for example, under summaries of ongoing clinical activities, you want to describe all of your inpatient and outpatient clinical activities, including the location, whether it's in the hospital or at the CAM, if it's at an outreach site, what's the type of service, inpatient versus consult, time on service, weeks or months during the year, is it quarterly, and then what are your responsibilities? What do you do in terms that a non-clinical person will understand? Okay. So, for example, this is someone who's infectious disease, and it says clinical contributions on the general infectious disease inpatient consultation service attending 2010 to present. So how long have you been doing this? It's 2 to 12 weeks per year, 6 hours per day. Do daily supervision of ID fellows, internal medicine residents, medical students, and the management of general infectious disease patients admitted to Barnes Jewish Hospital. So I think when you read through this, you get a good idea of what this person does, who they're responsible for, where they're doing it, and what the time commitment is, okay? And it's bulleted, average of 400 new consults seen per year. That, gives idea of how busy the person is. And then also, they also do the bone and joint inpatient consultation service. Been doing this from 2010 to present. And there may be a little bit of overlap, but the bone and joint service is different from the consultation service. So you want to make sure you include both of those if you do two different things. But you can see it gets the point across. It's pretty straightforward. It's concise, but it actually is pretty inclusive. Then we go on. Things change. So here in the middle you see medical director, infectious disease outpatient clinic, 2011 to 2012. Again, the same kind of description. Barnes Jewish West County, that was done for a year. You can see, saw 7 patients a week, half day of clinic per week. So whatever those clinical activities are, you want to capture that. Let's see, the second bullet, development of methods for improved quality and efficiency of clinical care. Here, physician peer support, WashU. After medical errors, much of the focus is on providing support to the affected patient and family. The physicians involved often suffer in silence, which may significantly impact their personal or that cut off. But anyway, you can see there's a description of what that actual category encompasses. All right. The next heading is development of methods to improve quality and efficiency of clinical care. Again, describe the area of need, what was developed. Was it documentation guidelines for that area, outreach clinics? Was it policy or procedure development, involvement in quality improvement initiatives? So anything that sort of fits under that category, you want to describe it. Who was involved in the development? Was it something you did on your own? Were you the leader of a team? And then who's the target audience? And you want to also include the time frame that you were involved in the activity. Involvement in clinical trials or grants. So this has an asterisk by it because typically in with the old format, industry sponsored trials you didn't include on our CV, but there is a place for those on the CEP. So here you only want to include trials related to patient-oriented research. Do not put any budget information on there. describe your role in the trial. And again, if it's an industry-sponsored trial, you can include that here, or any non-governmental granting agencies. But if you have that on your CV, don't duplicate it. Okay, that's the key. You don't want to duplicate the trials that are on your CV with the trials that are also on your CEP.
Where is it better to put it? Like if you.
So I would say if you're just starting your CV, go ahead and put it on your CV. If you've already started.
Why would you put it one place versus the other? What's the thinking?
Because initially, NIH trials were on your CV, and industry sponsors were not. So they wanted industry sponsored on your CV. So now with the new format, you can just put it all on your CV.
I see.
But for those people who already had them split, the point is don't go back and redo it and shift everything one way or the other. So mine, I started mine a while ago, so mine are split. I'm not going back redoing it.
Got it.
Number one, if I try to redo it, it's going to throw off all the formatting. So if you've already split it, it's fine, but if you haven't, just put it all over on your CV. Any other questions about that? I know that's a little tricky. I mean, that's, happens when you, like I said, try to go rogue. Clinical administrative responsibilities, if you're over a particular area like the heart station, you want to describe that. If you're over the, PFT lab or something, that goes in this category. Again, what's your role, responsibilities? And the other thing you always want to capture is the time commitment. Because it's one thing to be over something and it only requires that you talk to somebody once a year versus you're over something and you're spending hours each week with paperwork and all of that kind of stuff, or you're supervising other people. So you want to make that clear that, this is something that really takes time and I really had to develop this area. Under clinical contributions, there's this section that says feedback. And again, in medicine, the feedback from the residents and fellows used to be on that website. What's it called? Where we do our evaluation. My evaluations. Thank you. My evaluations. So the thing is, you may just want to say, contact administrator or something, because, okay, what's going to happen? If you go on there to get evaluations, you're going to pull the best ones off, right? Whereas there may be some that are kind of mediocre. So that's something that typically your division chief or department chair, if you just say, available upon request, they'll go on there and find whatever they're looking for, but there is a spot for that. Now, patient evaluation, so if you got this really wonderful letter from a patient and as a result they decided to donate $100,000 to support your clinical endeavor, that's something different. Put that on there for sure. All right. Now, the next section, oh yeah.
What about the feedback from families? What is that? A lot of us get like letters and cards and things like that, but there's really no way to document something like that. Is that what it's getting at? Or more just like big donations?
So big donations, but if it's just a kind of casual, thank you very much for taking care of my
Right.
dad.
Right.
You can keep those in a folder. One of the suggestions was that since you're department chair, your division chief has to write a summary letter.
Mm-hmm.
If you give that folder to that person or their representative, then they can sort of write a summary for you that's not you just saying all the wonderful things. They're actually kind of summing up what the general tone would be.
Okay. Makes sense.
Okay. All right, so any other questions about the clinical sections? So if we move on to educational contributions, and I think this is probably where there's the most change in the CEP, and it definitely reflects kind of the shift towards more educational available activities in the last couple of years. With the introduction of the Academy of Educators, and there's remote teaching fellowships, so there are a number of educational opportunities that folks can take advantage of. And this also includes CME activities as well. So direct teaching sessions, would include classroom, clinical teaching. So if you have, fellows in your clinic, or if you do weekly EKG teaching with the medical students, or whatever that may be, teaching them how to do smears, or whatever. From a clinical standpoint, same thing. Indicate your role, describe, the course, if there's a panel that you're part of, is a symposia, who's the target audience, what's the time commitment, number of hours per week or per month or per year, particularly if you're teaching a course, if you're part of the second-year pathophysiology course, that may only be 4 hours per year or 2 hours per year, but that's very important. That you indicate who that audience is, what the time commitment is. And when it comes to the CME talks, even if it's a talk that you give over and over and over again, you want to put it on your CV, on your CEP, because maybe the general theme is the same, the talk may actually be the same, like you give an annual noon conference to the internal medicine residents. Every year, you want to put that on there, because when someone looks at this, what they'll see is, oh, this is the go-to person for, diarrhea. Because all of your lectures and things and everything focus around diarrhea year after year. I'm sorry, that was just the first thing that came to mind. I apologize. But whatever that topic is, but you can see those themes in there. So someone who's not, in your division, one of the basic scientists who's reviewing this, or someone who's outside the department, they see that consistent theme through your clinical work, but also in your teaching. This is the go-to person for this particular area. So don't undervalue yourself. Even if it's the same talk, it has value, so make sure that you put that on there. Curriculum development, a lot of folks are involved with that when it comes to the courses. If it's an existing course and you've made change, indicate that. Same thing, who's the target audience and what's your time commitment. Educational leadership, what are the positions held within the department, the school, or even nationally from an educational standpoint. Courses developed, whether special projects, program development, and again, what's the target audience for that group. Learner assessment, did you develop any new tools or processes? Target audience, and then do you have any outcomes at this point? You can actually add that in there as well. And I think, now with, again, these different opportunities that are becoming available through the medical school, more opportunities to participate in some of these activities. Handouts, have you developed any multimedia presentations? For example, Tim has some stuff that some online tools that he's developed for nephrology, for the medical students and for the residents. So you want to put that here. It's an online, what's the link to that material, so you can put a hyperlink in there. New methods of education, simulation models, kind of the same thing. Include all of that in there. Graduate students, fellows, medical students, mentorship. So just a brief table about direct mentorship. Now, this is kind of tricky because you want to make sure you include mentorship that's been, as we described, meaningful mentorship. So someone who comes and talks to you for 30 minutes and says, I'm interested in cardiology, what's your advice? And you give them 30 minutes of advice, you probably don't want to put that on your CEP. But if this is someone that you meet with on a monthly basis and you've done so the entire year, they're your mentee, and you've really guided them through that process, and maybe they've done a project with you, and you're writing them a letter at the end of the year, that's a different kind of mentorship. Okay, so just be careful that it's truly someone that you've really mentored, and not just someone that you've given a little bit of career advice to while sitting at Collins. But list the name of the mentee, what was the time period, what was the activity, and then include their current position. Because if you mentored them 10 years ago and now they're the chief of a section at another academic institution, that's a check for you. Help somebody along. So put that on there. And then again, describe the type of mentorship that was provided. CME courses, conferences, workshops, list the course name, what was your role, topic, location, and date. And the thing with all of this, you want it in chronological order. You want the oldest first and the most recent. Okay? Feedback, Same thing, information from course evaluations. If you've gotten any awards for teaching, for example, the teaching awards that they give through the dean's office, if you've received any of those. If you've gotten any of the grants, like the low teaching fellowships, and then like the Distinguished Teaching Service Awards, make sure you put those on there as well under the feedback section. Educational publications, again, these are typically the non-traditional, peer-reviewed journal publications. So if you're writing things for the lay press, books, chapters, and again, books and chapters that you have not included on your CV, okay? So if it's on your CV, don't duplicate it on the CV.
The Meta's portal is peer reviewed and now indexed in PubMed,
So
that
they'll
should
switch over
probably be better
to the CV, yeah. I think when we created this, it was not.
Yeah.
So we can make that change then.
So the question thing with the mentors, there is a mentee section for the CV as well. And there's also, the honors and awards section. So again, this always comes up like what to put where.
So don't duplicate it. If it's an honor or award that's appropriate for your CV, don't duplicate it on your CVP. And traditionally with the mentors on the CV, it was more for the research mentorship versus career mentorship. Even though some people may have included career mentorship, but most people put research mentorship on there more so than career, and career was on the CVP. So I mean, there's some areas that may be, gray. There's no, this absolutely cannot be, on your CV or on your CVP. But, these are just some general guidelines. If you think about the CV in a more traditional sense, anything that wouldn't traditionally go on your CV, then it's very appropriate to put it on your CVP. And then this gets into community service, and again, for community service, if you have it on your CEP, that's fine. But if you haven't, if you're putting it on your CV, if you're just now creating your CV, that's fine as well. But here we're talking about participation in School of Medicine, hospital, department committees. If you're in a leadership role with those committees, describe your activity, the role, and the time commitment. And again, you want to put those committees that you were actually an active participant. If you were part of a committee and you never went to a single meeting, don't put it on there. Because I guarantee you, somebody who's going to read over is like, oh yeah, I was on that committee. They never showed up. Every time I called, her name, she was never there. So just make sure that it's something that you actually did make a specific contribution to while a participant. Same thing for participation in local, regional, and national committees. And this is particularly true for, like the different professional organizations. If you're AHA or American Heart Association or American College of Cardiology, what was your role, what was the time commitment, that kind of thing. Media activities, a number of people are asked to go on the radio or on TV to talk about whatever the big item of the day is. Hillary Babcock, a couple weeks ago, she's been all over the place talking about coronavirus. So those are things that you want to put on here as well. Let's see. Yeah, newspaper goes there as well. If you've written some articles for the newspaper, again, newspaper. This is just an example of community service. So for example, on the traditional CV, it may say clerkship directors in internal medicine from 2001 to present. But on your CEP is where you get to really expand that. So not only wasn't just simply you were part of clerkship directors in internal medicine, but you have a brief description of what it is. You were the education committee, then you were the vice chair of curriculum, then you were the treasurer, president-elect, and then president. So it just shows the leadership roles and the extent of your involvement in this organization versus just simply, I was a member of the organization. And again, and if you have annual summaries or reviews, you can just say, include those as an attachment. But most people don't. It's a category that's on there. And then there's this category of other. There's something so unique about what you're doing that just isn't captured in any of the headings, then you can put it under other on your CEP. All right, so just in summary, on the website, there's a copy of the APGAR document, which you have in your packet, the WashU CV format, and then also the Clinician Educator format as well. And we reference these to our Office of Faculty Development website because ours is just slightly different than the School of Medicine document as well. Any questions?
So for example, on the slide where you showed us where he was talking about his clinical duty, they say like average of how many consults per year on like the different services and things like that. Where do people pull that data from?
Yes, you can get that information from the faculty practice plan. Or your division administrator, business manager should have that information as well. The faculty practice plan also will have it.
Is that an email or like a website thing? Like, what's like, who do you contact?
Oh, the faculty practice plan?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a couple folks over there, I'm not sure. Did you just call over there? Paul Shield is over faculty practice, he wouldn't have it, but I guess one of his assistants. Yeah, whatever the number for faculty practice plan, I'm not sure, if you just call, they can direct you to the right place. But your business manager should have that information as well.
You may have covered this, on the CV, there's this clinical title and responsibilities and teaching title and responsibilities. Is that just like a shortened version of
Yeah, so
CEP?
that's the bulleted. That's the
Okay,
bulleted, that would just be, for example.
like attending physician
Right,
on
attending
inpatient service.
Right, attending physician, Barnes-Jewish
Okay.
Hospital,
Okay.
infectious disease,
Okay,
inpatient service.
but that should be there. It's
Right,
not-
that should be there, and it's just gonna be the heading.
Okay.
On the CEP is where you go into the detail of what that actually involves, how much time, who you're supervising, and, the true description of what that really means.
So I always looked at the CV as sort of being the sort of longitudinal accumulation, CP more of kind of like, well, what did you do this sort of last year? But there's a longitudinal component.
There's a longitudinal.
So if you're on a service at one point back a couple of years ago and you're on a different service now, you should still have those on.
You should still have it on there and you have that ending date. And that's the example that I showed. I think there's one who only did something for 2 years out at Barnes West County. So if there's a shortened period, you indicate that it ended and then move on to the next thing. If there's overlap, if you're doing 3 things at once, or 3 different times in a year, you put all 3 on there. But both of these documents are longitudinal. So they will grow as you progress on.
You can understand the importance of doing this now, those of you guys that are just the early career or emerging career. It is so challenging to sit down and do this after you've been here for 5 or 10 years or longer, trying to put it, remember all the things that you did. This is the time, and you'll see, sometimes you go through this and do it, and you'll get it back from Dr. Prater or others saying, be more specific, talk more about what you do. This is the time, if you're a clinician educator especially, where you may not have significant publications or there's things that you're doing that really are important and valued. This is the time to show up that you gotta keep trying to do it, because trying to sit down 5 years down the road and do it is
Oh, it's
really,
painful.
really tough.
Yeah, I was one of the first people to do it back in 2013, and I think mine came back about 3 or 4 times. And then a couple of years ago, I was up for promotion. So I'd already gone through one promotion process, so I kicked it, to the chairman's office for review. It came back again, and I was like, and it came back with red markings on it. I was like, are you kidding me? But, and so I kind of retooled something. So I think now, after all these years, I think I finally have it in a format that I can just keep adding to. But that initial one was painful because I went through and did it, and then after I finished it, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And it was something relatively important, so then I had to go back and add that to it because you just forget about stuff. So the more you get it kind of in line now, then all you have to do is just add to it. Just add to it and keep rolling. Okay. So Jen, any other questions?
You mentioned endowed research funds going on the CEP under feedback. Would that
So-
not be like a non-government?
That would be under
research support
right,
on the
that would be,
CEP?
yeah. Yeah, anything big like that, like a Glaxo grant or Burroughs Welcome grant or something like that.
I mean, like one that a patient set up for you.
No, BJ Foundation
Yes.
grants definitely put on the CV.
Okay, sounds.
And, that's a good one if the patient makes a donation. I think it goes either place, but, you know, if you wanna go into a lot of detail about what it's about and all of that, it's kind of non-traditional, then you wanna, you know, capture all that information on the CEP with maybe just a mention on your CV as to what it is, but then if you wanna give more detail about it, then the detail goes on the CEP. So you can't get away with absolute no duplication, because some things, you know, have to be, you know, like the clinical responsibilities have to be in both places, but that real description of the breadth is gonna come out on the CEP. Because like, for example, on my CV, I have, you know, co-director of the Office of Faculty Development, but it's on my CEP that I have like a whole page like of stuff, just kind of outlining what we've actually done. Okay, any other questions?
Let me ask a basic, very basic question.
Sure.
Why does it non-medical people evaluate the promotion of the medical staff? And when
Why?
it goes to the promotion process, the ad hoc, why these are
Like, why are there basic scientists on that?
Because they're department chairs. I mean, they're still medical, some of them are MDs, but they're, yeah, MDs and PhDs, but they're department chairs. They're just not clinicians.
Gotcha.
They're not active clinicians. And it's the same, you know, when the basic science folks come up for promotion, there are a mix of clinical and non-clinical folks on the committees. All right, so Jen, you want to